Today we're going to show you how to put together an Xbox 360 controller with a bunch of custom parts. You can get all of those at lighthouseleds.com. One of the special tools that you need is a T8 security torque screwdriver. That's what you need in order to take all the screws out of a wireless Xbox controller. If you're doing this to a wired controller, just a small Phillips screwdriver will work. In this example, we're using a stock black Xbox controller case with the appropriate custom parts. Alright, so once you have the whole Xbox controller taken apart and you have just the board out, you can leave the rumble motors in. That way you don't risk pulling the wires out. The trickiest part of the whole swap when you're changing the parts is probably removing and putting the triggers, the new triggers, back in. What I do, and I've done quite a few of these, is I just use this and I kind of as a prying tool, and I put it in here and I pry this out just ever so gently, and then I press down on it and it releases the trigger, and then you can pull it off. Make sure not to shoot the springs everywhere. Then you pull it. And then do the same thing for the other trigger. So I got both my springs and both the triggers. And then there is a difference between the left and the right triggers, so you want to make sure that you put them on the right side. So what I do is just it just slots in there, and then I put the spring into the trigger. There's a little post in there that it sets in. And then I push it up and it'll fall onto the other post. And you'll make sure it kind of goes. Make sure the spring is fully seated, and then we're going to do the exact opposite that we did before when you're putting it in. So you put it in there, kind of just pry it over just a little bit, just so it'll seat. Then you want to test it, make sure everything works, and then we're going to do the exact same thing for the other side. So get the trigger on there, put the spring in, and then get it lined up so that when you push it down, the spring falls onto the post. And then use the screwdriver as a lever. You don't need a ton of pressure because you don't want to break anything or mar the board. And then there you go. You've got both the triggers and they work just great. Flip over the controller. Now you're done with the triggers. The next step, putting on custom thumbsticks. We're going to go with these clear green ones. I believe in our store they're called money green. So you just hold it firmly and you press it down. The only trick here is it is kind of not necessarily notched, but it's oblong, so it'll only go on two ways. Press them down and they're on all the way. So we're done with that part of the controller. We're going to go ahead and set this aside for the time being. And then we're going to work on the top portion of the controller, the shell. We've already put this D-pad in. They're not too bad to take apart. All you need is a little Phillips screwdriver. And there's a couple screws in the back. You take those screws out. And on some of them, once you take the screws out, there will be a couple small clips. And you just push those clips in and this top part will actually release from the back part, and it'll pull apart. And so that's how it comes out, and you would put the new one in that same fashion. Some D-pads come with both the top and the bottom, some come with just the top. The ones that we sell come with the top and the bottom. So now that you have your D-pad in, we're going to go ahead and put in these custom chrome buttons. And we'll go ahead and start off with the guide button. And all these buttons only fit in one way. They're all notched. Let's see here. There we go. There we go. And then we have just a black stock pair of start back buttons. And then that's what we've got there for the top controller. And we have one more piece to put on, and that's the bumper set. And you can get these in a whole bunch of different colors as well. Here we're just using another stock black set of bumpers, just because that's what we chose for this particular controller. And it just slides right on there. Really easy. Probably one of the easiest things to install. After that, you can go ahead and you can put on what we call the bottom trim piece. And there's several posts at the base of the controller here that it rests on, so you want to make sure those are all lined up. And so it just sits there like that. And then the next thing that you want to do is grab your controller board. Actually, you want to put your rubber button piece on. If you ever build controllers, that's probably one of the things that you forget the most. So don't forget that piece. So after you put the rubber piece on, you also need a rubber piece for the D-pad. So as you can see, I almost forgot one of the other rubber pieces. Very, very easy to do, and there's nothing more frustrating than putting your whole controller together and getting excited to use it and forgetting one of these pieces because it renders your controller useless. Well, so the only trick about this is there's a little circle here and it lines up with a little post over here, so you can kind of press it over that post and it'll just rest on top of the D-pad. Okay. So now that that part's over, now you can actually take the controller board and you can put it into the case. So make sure you keep the case upside down so the buttons and everything doesn't fall out. The only thing that can kind of hang you up here is the thumbsticks. Sometimes don't like to go all the way through. They don't line up, so you just got to wiggle them a little bit. So now that the board is fully seated, go ahead and put your rumble motors in here. Very easy to do. And we're almost done. So the last piece, well, pretty much the last piece, go ahead and put the base on. I always put the triggers in first. Put my 2 fingers and you can press the battery pack springs in a little bit so that they line up. Got something there. And then it should all just press together nicely. And you can kind of see, boom, we have a controller. So you kind of want to hold it together with a little bit of pressure until you get a couple screws in there. I'm going to go ahead and start with the screw that's right behind the battery pack. That way it'll kind of hold the whole controller together. Again, we're using a T8 security Torx. It has to be the security Torx. You can get any of these parts plus the security Torx, even replacement screws at lighthouseleds.com. It's just how it's spelled. And you want to just tighten these till they're snug. You don't want to over tighten them because then you can strip out the holes. And if that happens, then you'll have one less screw holding your case together. Oh, I already put a screw in that hole. Sometimes they don't want to drop down there, you can just wiggle them a little bit and they'll go in there. If you're buying a brand new case, you might have to apply a little bit more pressure to get them to start screwing in because the holes on the other side of the case haven't been threaded yet. So they'll be just a little trickier to get started, but nothing bad at all. Okay, and then the very last part, you put your battery pack in. Boom. Controller is done. Nice twist on the controller. And that's how you put together and customize your controller. Again, you can get any of the parts you've seen at lighthouseleds.com.